I surveyed world first raid competitors with over 5,000 raid clears who are all about optimization to ask them what I should bring into the raid. And you know what the one thing everyone had in common was? Having Lumina in their back pocket for its 35% damage boost, which is better than Well of Radiance's 25, by the way. So I'm giving you a refresher on how it works today, because when you use it for your team, things like this are made possible. To melt Oryx like that, you obviously need an efficient DPS, but it also comes thanks to the Lumina buff at the beginning of the clip. So I want to quickly cover how it works. And looking at the weapon specifically, there are two main things: the Noble Rounds exotic perk, and then Blessings of the Sky. And instead of just reading them, let me try and actually show you a visual example. The exotic perk makes it so that when you get a kill, that enemy will drop a little white floaty thing called a remnant. Two of them will drop if you have the catalyst, but either way, it's just going to float there until you get within a reasonable range, and then it heat seeks towards you. When that happens, your next hip fire bullet is converted into something called a Noble Round. It'll show up on the left-hand side of your screen. This means that your next hip fire shot will not be a bullet, but rather one of these. It heat seeks really strongly towards your teammate. I just recommend you shoot it in their general direction or slightly towards the ground, not high up in the air. You can hold multiple stacks of these, but more on that in a minute. Now, what does it actually do? Well, there's two things really. First off, it refills 4 of your own ammo, which is nice because you can keep playing without reloading. But the real juice is the fact that it applies something called Blessings of the Sky, that other perk that we saw in the original screen. Now that perk, which lasts 11 seconds, does 3 things. First off, it heals your teammate for 90 HP. Second is the fact that all 3 of their weapons get a 35% damage buff. And then 3 is the fact that you simply giving them that buff gives it to you as well. So you'll actually see Blessings of the Sky on your own screen too, meaning you also have the 35% buff to all 3 of your weapons. Now, it's truly as simple as that, but I did want to talk about some key things to consider when bringing this into the raid. When you're doing an encounter with straightforward ad clear, you can obviously be just shooting these off whenever you want, but you can also stack them up to 5 like I said earlier, which is a pretty big key for giving them to your 5 teammates at the start of a DPS phase like that Oryx clip. You can swap weapons whenever, you'll always have those Noble Rounds and hip fire until you die, or of course if you accidentally use them. Next is the fact that you technically have your whole team covered like I just explained with one person using it because you can hand out 5 of these things. But the more people that are using this, the easier the buff gets spread around and the more consistently that you're all just going to be constantly doing 35% more damage than intended. Next is the fact that I said it lasts 11 seconds, which is because it's a 10-second timer where the double zeros at the ending still count. If you're giving these to teammates individually throughout the gameplay though, your timer will actually keep resetting back to that 10 seconds. The fourth thing is that if you're running a solar subclass, this will actually activate Ember of Benevolence because you're applying a cure to someone. And that fragment will give you a 200% regen boost to your abilities, which is pretty massive when you're looping this type of thing. Number 5 is that the game takes the highest empowering buff available. So if I deal 4620 at base, then add a Well of Radiance, I'll do 25% more. But then if I use Lumina, I'll get the advantage of healing in a well with a 35% damage buff instead of the base 25, because the game chooses the higher number across everything that's going on. If you haven't finished your catalyst, you can farm it really easily at Shirochi. I'm telling you, it'll take you like 20 minutes. All you got to do is just have them sit there damaging themselves. Let's say an SMG with ricochet rounds here like Om is showing you. Keep killing the thralls, keep healing them over and over, and you'll be done in no time. And I think last but not least is the fact that if you have Boots of Assembler on your mind for Warlocks doing the same thing, I can see why, but here's an example of how they're different. I do 4623 base here, and then GT has his boots on and pops as well. I'm only going to do 25% more, which is driven by the Well of Radiance because I have no Blessings of Sky from his boots. And that's because if you're in the same well as the person wearing the boots, you won't actually be getting that Blessings buff. They only seek to teammates outside of the well, which certainly has its use cases in some DPS phases, but not your standard one. Now you could technically tell everyone to wait before jumping into the well, but the Seekers take a while, they're half the length of time, non-repeatable, and it restricts the Warlock from using better exotic armor options. And I lied, there is one more thing. Happy raiding, everyone, and if you're struggling to reach max power, then click the on-screen video right here where I show you a way to grab old power leveling gear from seasons that date back as far as 2019 to make that whole process way quicker.